Today on the podcast, we're sitting down with Laura Lee Gulledge, the graphic novelist behind The Dark Matter of Mona Starr, one of my favorites. Laura Lee Gulledge is an Eisner Award-nominated cartoonist, teaching artist, musical librettist, and collaborative muralist based in Charlottesville, Virginia. Her books include YA graphic novels The Dark Matter of Mona Starr, Page by Page, Will and Wit, and the interactive sketchbook Dares, 24 Ways to Draw Out Your Inner Artist. Laura Lee explores visual storytelling at the intersection of wellness, whimsy, comics, co-creation, neurodiversity, and citizen artistry. Today, we're going to talk about her creation process, as well as the many creative activities she suggests for students, and her experiences leading workshops and visiting schools. So without further ado, let's jump in. Hey there, I'm your host, Betsy Potash, and one-pagers, project-based learning, and choice reading are my jam. I believe in you, and my goal is to help you explore all the creative possibilities you dream of for your classroom. I'm an educator, a chocolate cake aficionado, a traveler who can't wait to get back to Barcelona, and the kind of mom who brings her own mini makerspace to her kid's classroom when she comes to volunteer. I know this for sure, creativity isn't always easy. As a creative teacher, you get parent calls you treasure, and plenty of sidelong comments you'd rather forget. But here's the bottom line. Creative education can ignite a spark in your students and change their lives forever. You and I know this. You're an innovator. And while it's sometimes hard, it's so worth it. So let's explore the world of creative education together. Welcome to the Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast. Well, welcome to the show, Laura Lee. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's jump right into our topic for today of graphic novels. I know that you are a well-known graphic novelist and a visual learner yourself, so I thought it would be fun to start by talking about why you think graphic novels are important in school.
Well, I am amazed that there's now a huge young adult graphic novel bookshelf because when I was in school, there was nothing. There was no bookshelf. And I really wish that existed because I struggled with regular books because I had to picture everything in my head to follow along, which was very exhausting and confusing because I love story, but reading was sometimes really frustrating. So I think having options now for people like me who think in pictures and process information of pictures, it's just so much easier to read. So I think the embracing of visual literacy is just really amazing that librarians have pivoted so well over the past couple decades. So I'm constantly amazed at what I find on the bookshelf and what's available to people, especially for neurodivergent creators such as myself who are extremely visual. Um, you know.
Yeah. No, it's really amazing. I feel like there's just a flood of wonderful graphic novels available to students today. And there's been this dramatic shift in embracing them. And I'm just so thrilled about it. So
Me too.
this leads really well into my next question, which is kind of what do you feel like the experience that students have when they're reading a graphic novel? What does that give them that the text-only version doesn't give them? I know it gives them like a visualization for the story, but I feel like there's even more there.
I think it makes it just so much more accessible. So for me to enter a word world, I need to create it in my mind as a visual world for me to then enter. So when I'm presented with a visual world off the bat, it's like, oh, I can just walk into this world without having to do some like prep work in my mind. And then pictures, I think, can express things that words can't. I mean, heck, my first book, Page by Page, I basically was drawing a sort of masking autistic character and about these struggles of things I didn't have language for yet. And now I look at it, I'm like, oh, these are the things I was drawing about. And I could draw about it in pictures even before I had words for it. So I think especially with mental health or things about the body and our physicality, having pictures allows you to draw more abstract concepts that where the label maybe isn't even on your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I was so amazed in your book, The Dark Matter of Mona Starr, at the way that you drew emotions. And it really just, I've said this before. It
Mm.
blew me away. I couldn't believe how you could express these feelings in so many different ways with so many different layers of pictures that just I got it. I could really understand how she was feeling, and it struck me so
Oh.
much.
Oh, thank you. Well, I started off by doing art therapy on myself, and
Mm.
that's when I started really just drawing emotions for years before I even read a graphic novel, and I was basically building a visual language for myself, and then when I discovered graphic novels, it's like, "Oh, snap." I looked back at all those drawings, those self-portraits, it's like, "Oh, I'm like a character in a story." Like,
Wow.
these feelings, because also there's themes that come up over and over about different approaching different feelings from different angles and different metaphors. So
Yeah.
I feel so grateful to past tense me for drawing out all those feelings. I have like a database that I can pull from for conveying what feel like to me kind of universal experiences.
Yeah. That I think The Dark Matter of Mona Starr is outstanding, and it belongs on every teacher's shelf. Can you tell us a
Oh
little bit
gosh,
about
I'm blushing.
why you wanted to make that particular book and kind of what it can offer to students?
Oh, Mona, I love my little pandemic baby because she came out the first week of COVID, and it just broke my heart. It's like, "All the kids are depressed, and I finally have a book for you," and I can't get it.
Aw.
Um, but I she started off as, another character named Harmony for a different story idea,
Hmm,
um, that my agent was sort of like, "This story is really convoluted. I really am
hmm,
just interested in this depressed violinist character." And
hmm.
I thought, "Oh, no, I don't wanna just tell her story because that will get very personal."
Oh, yeah.
But then I thought I had put out a zine about drawing through depression that I fell into with my after I made my second book. I got that's when I hit my climate grief, sort of really went to some dark spots.
Mm.
It's my bleached eyebrow phase. So it's
Mm.
but he's like, "Yeah, you made a zine about drawing through depression. So what about a whole book?"
Yeah.
And that prompt just opened a little door in my mind of like, maybe we could find a way to find like a hopeful approach to telling this healing story. Because a lot of books about mental health kind of suck you into a world, and it can be even more of a downer to be in
Yeah.
that world. So I thought, how can I create a container where I can explore this in a way that gives me hope and doesn't just reinforce the like I'm doomed and
Yeah.
and look at my life of like, yeah, what's really helped us and who are characters that can personify different helpers, and how can we model things like going to therapy is something normal, and
Yeah.
celebrate healthy friendships, and yeah, share some tools. So I'm excited that I was sort of prompted past my comfort zone to talk about something I didn't feel like I had permission to talk about.
Yeah, I just think it's so helpful because I agree that often when you're talking about mental health and talking about it with students, it's easy to sort of go to the here are the problems you may face, here are the difficult things that are going to come up, and to see it kind of lit up on the page, even the dark emotions are drawn with so much beauty and in such a hopeful context with so much support. It just felt I don't know, it felt like a revolution to me. It was just really helpful without being prescriptive.
Oh, thank you. I think comics inherently helps diffuse serious topics because it's like a
Yeah.
cartoon. So
Yeah.
you can like unpack serious things because it's like beautiful and cute. And so it's a little more accessible and digestible.
Yeah. I'm curious if you were going to teach your own book, what kinds of activities would you have students do?
Teach like a
Yeah,
what
like teach a unit, teach a couple weeks where students were going to focus on The Dark Matter of Mona Starr. What sorts of things would you have them research or write about or try? How would you help them go deeper?
Oh, I love an art ed language arts question because I start off as a teacher, so I'm a huge educational
Awesome.
nerd.
Awesome. Well, you're amongst friends at the moment.
Yes. Well, yeah, it's because I was a teacher. It was the kids that inspired me to, like, go, find my purpose.
Yeah.
So I attribute to them. But anyway, teaching about Mona, gosh, I have, like a handful of lessons I would do. So one would be obviously making a self-care plan because in the back of the book, there's a blank one and a sample one to really
Mhm.
encourage, like, show others to, like, yeah, don't be scared to figure out, how to take some charge of your health.
Yeah.
And then, another activity that I've done before is where students actually draw a portrait of their matter, and I think I have a PDF of that one on my website.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe we could include some pictures in the show notes. That would be great.
Then I also, an activity you could do would be drawing or creating like an interactive installation of a well, because I use the metaphor of sort of falling down the well for when you fall into a depressive state. And so, oh, what
Mhm.
are the things that help you get out of the well? So, either a drawing interpretation of that, or more like note cards on a wall of almost like hand holding to climb out.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
yeah, 'cause, actually, a librarian, they did it over in Chesterfield where they had students write on note cards on this sort of 3D well, and it was everything from, um, like, what helps you climb out? It's like, "My sister," to God, to Taco Bell. So I think that's a great way to make it simple, and then also a marker dance party. 'Cause I think I have Mona doing that in the book, and I've done this before as well. Because embodiment is a big part of healing with mental and physical health, but I think young people can struggle to be in their body, so having them just be in their hand and doing dance with just hands, I think is a
Mm.
stepping stone,
That's
to,
cool.
getting in their body a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that kind of brings me toward this idea that often when we teach graphic novels, we're interested in having students work on this type of storytelling where they blend visuals and writing. And I think many kids take to it and are very excited about it. And then other kids are like, that's not for me. I was told in second grade that I'm bad at art and I haven't done it since. And so I'm curious, like a marker dance party is one sounds like a fun way to get started. What are some other pieces of advice you give to kids to help them try to share their ideas with this visual genre?
I love this question because so many kids will say, like, "I can't draw." But
Yeah.
thankfully in comics, you don't have to be a good artist because comics does not take itself seriously, and it's not about being realistic, it's about talking in symbolism. So I'll often bring up
Mhm.
the language of emojis. That emojis are a great example of the way to have like a really simple like pictograph representing something, and it doesn't have to be perfect because really any shape with arms and legs is boom a character,
Yeah.
or a letter, or it could, yeah. So I think thinking more symbolically opens up doors for them. That stick figures are okay as well. um, and that to keep things short, I only do mini comics with young people because really 6 to 8 panels is all you can kinda have the patience for. So something in that container, some prompts that I've used before are draw making a I worked with ESL kids where they did their immigration story,
Oh,
like
wow.
their first day of school. So, an origin
Yeah.
story is a good sort of small story to tell, or the story behind your name, or how you got a scar. Um, or it could be more just like a super structured, like pick a food, and you're all going to do food characters, and it's all like
Hmm.
fruits and vegetables, super simple if you
Yeah.
want to venture into fiction. But yeah, and then with writing a story, it's you just get to know your character first, and then they tell you what the story is. So you start by drawing out your character, gather your ingredients of like, who are the other characters? What's the setting? What's their name? What do they want? And with students, I find once we draw those ingredients together on a sheet of paper, then the story makes itself apparent because then the images can interact and
Yeah.
you can interact with them. So you start with the pictures and then you figure out what the story is. And I'll write it down on like, if with some students, it's helpful also to use Post-it notes to
Yeah.
write down the different things you want to happen, and then they can move them around. Because the sequential thing, I think, is what really throws people off. Like, how do you start and end and go from A to Z when you don't think linear? Um, so a bunch of random advice.
No, yeah, that's great. And it's reminding me, I watched a video of a workshop you did for some students where you're showing them your creation process. And I love those bulletin boards you have with all of your ideas and your images from your journals and stuff. Does your process kind of mirror what you're saying about students getting to know the characters and
Oh,
starting
yeah.
to draw out the story?
Definitely. I've never taken a creative writing class or illustration or comics or really any of this stuff. So
Wow.
my process has been
Wow.
very intuitive.
Yeah.
So each book I've approached a little differently. And this method of getting to know the character first, I do find
Mhm.
very helpful. And so I'll collect like all the ingredients, like all the images, all this, like the scenes that I feel like are part of a story. And then, yeah, dump them out on a bulletin board and start to move it around. It's also, I think, the kinesthetic element is really helpful for unlocking ideas
Yeah.
because then you can sort of also see your script. I like a visual script because then I can actually maybe write the words once I sort of see it in my head.
Yeah. Yeah, this is so interesting to me. I have a friend that I would love to connect you with really. She's been on the
Mm.
podcast as well. Her name is Angela Stockman, and she has brought this idea of the writing makerspace to a lot of schools with this kind of very idea that if students can draw out their argument, if they can collect visual pieces and then turn it into a story, it's much easier to start writing for a lot of kids if they can see the story first before they start to ever write words.
Yes. And when I write a story, the first thing I'll write is just what's would be on the back cover or the inside jacket. What would the elevator pitch of this idea
Mm.
be? Like, what's one paragraph? And so, because that takes off also the pressure of the whole book. Oh,
Right,
like start
right.
small or just do one scene with those characters and hang out with them.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so fun. I wanted to ask you a little bit about some of your favorite graphic novels because I imagine you have read a ton of them. And for teachers listening, they're always on the lookout for the best books they can share with students to engage them, to get them interested in reading, to help them have bridges to that reading life. And so I'm curious, what are some of your favorite graphic novels that you would recommend to students?
Oh, yeah. I was so excited when I discovered graphic novels. I was 27 when I first read a graphic novel and read like four and then was put the down. I was like, I'm going to make one. I don't know how, but I want to do this. So I
Yes.
love the graphic novels that are weird. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and that push the envelope of the medium because I didn't grow up like taking graphic novels like so seriously. So I love
Right.
what the more experimental ones. So I guess the ones that I would love to share would include Meanwhile by Jason Shiga because it's made by a mathematician turned graphic novelist, and it's like a choose your own adventure story with all these tabs that you follow through the
Interesting.
book. So I feel like the middle school boys like are super into that one.
That's awesome.
And the book, and of course Owly, I feel like is really good for reluctant readers because
Mm.
also in Owly the speech bubbles don't have words. They're all like symbols and pictograms. So
Wow.
it's like visual storytelling in visual storytelling.
Wow, that's so interesting.
And it's so cute. Uh,
Yeah.
So that one is, I feel like, a good one for kids who are, yeah, struggling to read or ESL. Then let's see, Annie Sullivan and the Trials of Helen Keller. It's a little random, but I'm really obsessed with how this book shows Helen's journey of developing language where her world is like all black and then words appear and then
Oh, wow.
shapes. And so I think it's just a really beautiful depiction of, yeah, a blind experience that you could not do in a regular book
Oh, that's so
with
interesting.
words. Yeah, I like the books that like can't be word books.
Yeah, yeah, they're, like, deep in the genre.
And my probably my favorite graphic medicine book is Lighter Than My Shadow by Katie Green, which is probably more high school range because it gets
Mm,
into some serious stuff with her struggles with eating disorder, dysmorphia, and some abuse. But she drew her illness the same way I drew my matter. Like she drew it as this like black squiggle, this
mm.
cloud around her. And I was like, oh, we're both drawing about the same thing. It's just hers is telling her different things than
That's so
mine.
interesting. Yeah,
Um, yeah, and it's also just a beautiful book. Um,
yeah.
and then it goes my books.
Yeah, of course. They're front and center.
and
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, there's one more. It's more of an adult nerdy book, but
Mhm,
it's called Here by Richard McGuire.
mhm.
And it's like it shows one space like on the planet through time. And that's the book.
Mm.
So it's
Wow.
very unconventional sequential storytelling that like makes my brain go ding in a good way.
Wow, that sounds so interesting.
'Cause
Is
I'm
there
really
text
interested in
also?
time as a medium and how we play with representing time.
Wow. Does it tell a story also in text?
There is text, so it'll have, like, looking at, like so one page spread will have maybe 3 different timelines represented in different windows, so there are different little storylines happening, like, there's one that's, like, in the '50s, there's, like, one back in Paleolithic times, like, but it's very, like, non-traditional linear. In fact, I couldn't even tell you what the story is, I was more just taken by
Oh my gosh, I wanna get all these books so much, and they are not gonna be at the bookstore where I am here in Bratislava.
Oh,
I will have to go to my internet sources.
oh, yes. Happy hunting.
Well, I wanted to ask you one last question, and this one sort of backs off of graphic novels a little bit, but just ask you to think back when you were a student and you were so visual and so creative. Now you're talking to all these teachers. What's like an activity or type of project that you wish you would have seen more at school? Something that would really have tapped into those gifts that you were bringing to the classroom.
Mm. Well, I feel like what I started doing in high school and my AP art portfolio actually was about drawing emotions,
Yeah.
using like abstracted human form and this idea of the personification of feelings. And in the 90s, that was not a thing. I feel like it's so much more normalized now with things
Mm.
like Inside Out, even.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's probably on people's radar doing, like drawing your matter. But I think the thing that I really would have benefited from, something that I always do with young people is asking them to draw their genius, because I
Ooh.
thought there was something wrong with me for a long time,
Yeah.
because the traditional definition of genius as a person is incorrect. It's actually a spirit. And it reframes the creative process for me, a much healthier relationship
Hmm.
where I'm working with this like invisible collaborator. And it's like, this little, might call him Gene, and he's a little rainbow star. And since I um, started to personify him, like it was just really helpful for better framing my process, setting boundaries, understanding my needs. So that's something I do with adults and young people is to have them draw what their genius looks like. And
Yeah.
Elizabeth Gilbert did a TED talk about the elusive creative genius, where she talks about the origin, in case you are curious.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. Well, I love that. It would be fun to draw their genius and then to write about it too and kind of put those things together in a weave.
Yeah, because when you're a kid, back when you were, like, playing by yourself, with your toys, like, who were you talking to? You were talking to your genius.
Hmm. It's lovely. Well, Laura Lee, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a delight. I know the teachers are going to want to go learn more about all your work and about the possibility of having you also to visit schools. Where can they come to learn more about it all?
Yeah, I love to partner with everybody. My website is whoislauralee.com, and my social media is at Laura Lee Gulledge. And I have a bunch of free learning resources and videos and handouts and things on my website too, under the learning section.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to link to them all in the show notes so that they are super easy to find. Thanks so much for joining us today. There are so many visuals and links waiting for you over in the full show notes at nowsparkcreativity.com today. So I really encourage you to go exploring. Until next time, take care of yourself and stay creative.